And then when at the end of the year when we had our program,
Sorry. I didn't get any of that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm just fighting a moth over here.
Yeah, I tried to get it over here, but I couldn't do it without making noise.
Okay, Sarah, so I'm going to ask you about your class had an impact on your father. Do you want to talk about how that impact happened
oh,
and how it
okay,
changed your father?
yeah. This class not only had impact on me, because after that I always made a point of doing something Armenian in my classes, but it also had an impact on my father. And when I took him to the program, the end of the year program, he was embraced by the kids. And after that, my father made a point of sitting down and writing. He was just writing. I don't know what he was writing, but every day he was writing. And I have a picture of him where he's outside. He had taken a folding table out there, and he, like a student, he's writing. I had no idea he's writing in Armenian. I couldn't read it. And unfortunately, I didn't bother to see what he's writing about. I knew he was writing about his experience. And so I would leave it at that, except when I had my papers on the table and his papers on it, he would write in Armenian on my papers. And I didn't know what he was writing, but I since learned that he's appraising what I'm doing. And this only occurred to me when I was working on translating and filing his papers. I didn't question what he was doing. But this started him. Up until now, he never wrote. He tried to talk to people, but nobody was listening. And sometimes people would get tired of my dad because you could never quiet him down. The minute he got somebody to talk to, he would start talking about an experience he has had. He would always start with a funny experience. And he had a lot of funny experiences as a kid or throughout his experience. And so as he was writing, this went, year after year now he's writing. And I'm doing my teaching. He's writing papers. I'm working on papers. And I remember my mother, telling me that tell him to stop writing because at night he has all these nightmares. And I thought, well, that's his, if he wants to write, he has to write. Not realizing also, did we do him right in having him continue? Because, waking up he was completely wet. His pillow is wet, the comforter is wet, and this went on every night. My father had nightmares. And I think in the morning or during the night, sometimes my mother and the two would talk about what the nightmare's about. But in the daytime, he didn't make an issue of it. It was like, a regular day. And when I realized, and as the years went on, he's sitting at this end of the table, I'm sitting at that end of the table with our stuff, and our visiting guests was diminishing because we were getting older, and so we didn't have them every week. But this one week, I don't know who was coming, and I knew we had to set the table. And so my mother says, clear off the table, clean up the dining room. And so we put all my father's papers in a couple of boxes. We took a couple outside, one stayed here. And that was the last that, it wasn't the last of his writing, but the last of, he never stopped writing. He was interested. Then we went through a period where he was interested in having somebody write his memoirs. He didn't have confidence in me, and I don't blame him. He knew I wasn't a writer. I think he wanted a novel. And we had 3 different people or 4 different people to actually, 2 completed his story. And when they would bring, like 50, 60 pages, and he would read it, he was so disappointed. And, the last, it was a priest that came the last time. And I was home, so I was sitting there when the priest would come, and they were talking with each other. And as my father was rereading what the priest had written, my father said, but I didn't say that. I didn't say it like that. And I heard that over and over and thinking, what are they putting down? What are they writing down? And and then when another guy this was another one, and when I saw, again I was home and this guy used to come, and my father is talking, I would see him just, leaning on his elbow, letting my dad talk, and he's not writing. And I'm thinking, So I asked the guy, I said, how are you going to fill in? Do you have pictures or anything? He says, yeah, I'm just taking notes, and when I go home, I'll fill in the notes. So this is what they were doing. They were taking down notes. They weren't verbatim translating with what he's, or writing down what he's saying, recording what he's saying. And this is probably what, he wanted to hear what he's saying. What I admire about my dad is when he said, I didn't say that and I didn't say it like that. I knew he didn't want somebody to embellish on his experience. And sometimes we would hear people talking about their experiences, and my dad said, he's bluff. He just, gapuche. He's just making things up. And this is, when I read memoirs myself now, I try to figure out, is this person really, you could tell. Are they making things up? Are they too factual with what they're saying? Or is it like a raw experience? And to me, that's really important. And unfortunately, a lot of made up, and sometimes I'll make that criticism when I go to these book signings, and they say, well, he has to make it sound like interesting and inviting and historical. So no longer is a memoir. And it's a made-up story. And they say, no, but it's somebody's experience, So, yeah, I'm critical on when I read memoirs, and this is what I look for. You could almost tell. Is it too, one thing is missing in my dad, is he doesn't give documents to prove what he's saying. He's not proving what he's saying. He's saying what he experienced. He doesn't have to prove it.
On that subject of proof, I'm going to jump ahead.
I gotta change batteries.
Oh, okay. Actually,